Anna Harper had always thought of her life as steady, maybe even predictable. Her husband Mark was a kind, reliable man who had been her partner for 10 years. And together they had 2 children, a cozy home in suburban Chicago, and a life that ran like clockwork. Yet beneath the surface of predictability, Anna often felt a quiet restlessness. Life had become routine dinners, school runs, and weekend chores, and while she loved her family deeply, she occasionally wondered if she had forgotten what it meant to feel truly alive. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when Anna decided to attend a charity gala organized by a local community center. She had been invited by a few friends and thought it would be a nice break from her daily responsibilities. Mark, caught up with work at his law firm, promised to join later, leaving Anna to navigate the evening on her own. She dressed carefully, selecting a modest yet elegant dress, and allowed herself a hint of excitement. Even in her predictable life, small pleasures mattered. The gala hall buzzed with energy. Strings of warm lights hung across the ceiling. Soft classical music played in the background, and the chatter of parents, local business people, and friends created a comforting hum. Anna greeted acquaintances, exchanged pleasantries, and tried to immerse herself in the evening. She felt a flicker of anticipation, the chance to be seen outside the context of her home or her role as a mother. And then she saw her Vanessa Collins. She was someone Anna had met briefly weeks earlier, a client of Mark's who had been invited to the gala. At that first meeting, Vanessa had struck Anna as polished and self-assured, intelligent and graceful. But seeing her now, moving confidently through the crowd, chatting animatedly, and laughing lightly at something Mark said, Anna felt an unexpected tightening in her chest. Mark, always poised, seemed to come alive in Vanessa's presence. He leaned slightly toward her when she spoke, laughed with a warmth that Anna hadn't seen in weeks, and gestured with hands animatedly as she made a point. The interaction was casual, polite, and professional on the surface. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. A spark, subtle yet undeniable, had entered the room, one that involved her husband and another woman. Anna forced herself to focus on her friends, to engage in conversation and sip her wine, yet her eyes kept drifting back to Mark and Vanessa. She noticed the way Vanessa's shoulder brushed against his arm during a laugh, the way he nodded attentively when she spoke, and how effortlessly she seemed to draw him in. The sight triggered a complex mix of emotions in Anna: jealousy, curiosity, and a strange, almost guilty fascination. She couldn't look away. Her mind raced. Was she overreacting? They were only talking, after all. Mark loved her. He had never given her reason to doubt him. Yet the way he smiled at Vanessa, the lightness in his voice, the small intimacy of gestures, it felt like a window into something Anna had missed noticing. Something she hadn't realized was fading between them. She had assumed their marriage was secure, unshakable. But seeing this interaction awakened a quiet panic. Mark eventually noticed her across the room, his smile faltering briefly as he realized Anna was watching. "Anna, I was hoping you'd get here sooner," he called, his voice carrying warmth and a hint of surprise. Anna forced a polite smile. "Traffic was terrible," she said softly, though she barely registered the words. Her gaze involuntarily flicked back to Vanessa one more time. She could see Vanessa's eyes on Mark, a friendly warmth that seemed to glow in contrast to the distance Anna felt herself. The gala continued, but Anna's attention remained divided. She laughed at her friends' stories, sipped wine, and nodded at compliments. But she was always aware of Mark's presence with Vanessa. She noted every interaction, the tilt of his head when she spoke, the way Vanessa's laughter caused his eyes to crinkle, the small, natural gestures that indicated ease and connection. Anna felt a pang of longing for the attention, the vitality, and the closeness she had once shared with her husband. By the time the gala ended and the guests began leaving, Anna's mind was spinning. Vanessa left with Mark's colleagues, chatting amiably as Mark held the door for her. Anna walked beside him quietly, her heart heavy but her face composed. They exchanged a few words about the event, the decorations, and the wonderful turnout. But a tension hung in the air that neither addressed. Anna's thoughts replayed every gesture, every laugh, every subtle glance that had made her feel like a stranger in her own marriage. That night, Anna lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Mark was in the next room, presumably finishing some late work. The image of him smiling at Vanessa, the intimacy of their interaction, haunted her. She didn't want to admit it, but she had watched and she had felt something shift inside herself. The feelings were complex: jealousy, fear, an odd fascination, all mingled together, leaving her with a restless ache. Anna's thoughts drifted to the past, to the early days of her marriage. She remembered the spark, the laughter, the easy closeness she had felt with Mark. Life had grown busier and the warmth had slowly receded into routine. Seeing him with Vanessa had been a mirror, reflecting not a betrayal, but a reminder of what she had been missing in her own life: attention, acknowledgement, emotional connection. As she lay there, Anna realized that this night had awakened something important. It wasn't just about Mark or Vanessa. It was about herself. She recognized that her attention to her own feelings, her awareness of what she needed, had been dulled by years of routine and domestic responsibility. The sight of her husband drawn to someone else, even in a professional, innocent way, was a wake-up call by morning. Anna felt a quiet determination. She didn't want to be consumed by jealousy or fear. She wanted to understand her feelings, her marriage, and the subtle dynamics that had shifted over time. She resolved to observe without judgment, to learn without panic, and to confront the truth with clarity. The gala, the laughter, the subtle touches, and the warmth of Mark's attention toward Vanessa had done something unexpected. It had reminded Anna that her heart was still capable of feeling, still capable of noticing, and still capable of wanting more, not just from her husband, but from herself. It was the first step in a journey she didn't yet fully understand, a journey that would require courage, honesty, and reflection. She knew the days ahead would be difficult, filled with moments that would test her patience and resilience. Yet deep inside, she also felt a spark of hope. Hope that understanding, communication, and attention could rekindle the connection that had quietly slipped away. For now, Anna allowed herself a single, deliberate thought. Life was shifting, and though it was painful to witness, perhaps it was necessary. Perhaps watching, noticing, and acknowledging the truth was the first step toward healing, toward growth, and toward rediscovering the love she and Mark had built together. And as she got out of bed, preparing for the day, Anna realized that she couldn't look away. Not because she wanted to cause harm, not because she doubted Mark's love, but because she wanted clarity for herself, for her marriage, and for the life they had created together. The events of the gala would not fade from her mind easily. They would linger, urging her to question, to reflect, and to face the emotional truths that life had quietly placed before her. And somewhere deep inside, Anna knew that the choices she made in the coming days would define the future of her marriage, the depth of her connection with Mark, and ultimately, her own sense of self. It was a moment of awakening, painful, confusing, yet profoundly necessary, and Anna was determined to face it fully, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. In the days after the gala, Anna found herself replaying every detail of that evening. She remembered the way Mark had leaned slightly toward Vanessa, the subtle gestures that had made her stomach tighten, and the laughter that had seemed to echo differently than it had with her. She tried to dismiss the feelings as irrational. Mark loved her, and she had no reason to doubt him. Yet the more she tried to ignore it, the more her mind returned to that image of him smiling so genuinely at someone else. Mark, for his part, seemed oblivious to her internal struggle. He continued with his work, attending meetings, making calls, and occasionally answering Anna's questions with distracted responses. He mentioned Vanessa casually when talking about projects, highlighting her intelligence, her problem-solving skills, and how her perspective had helped in recent negotiations. Anna listened politely, but inside, a small fire of insecurity and jealousy flickered, growing with each passing day. One morning, Anna decided to visit Mark at his office. She wanted to see him, perhaps to understand what had changed, perhaps to remind herself that he was still her husband, and that their life together mattered. She prepared a small lunch, a sandwich, and a piece of fruit, and drove to the firm without warning him. It was a gesture born out of care, but also a subtle test of her own courage. As she entered the lobby, she froze. There he was, sitting across from Vanessa at a conference table. The sight made her heart pound. Vanessa leaned slightly forward, her hand brushing over some documents near Mark as they both laughed lightly at a joke. Anna felt a tight knot form in her chest, an ache she could not fully name. She wanted to leave to retreat and pretend she hadn't seen anything, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. She needed to understand, even if it hurt. Mark looked up then, noticing her presence. "Anna, you're here." His voice carried a mixture of surprise and hesitation. "I brought you lunch," Anna said softly, trying to keep her tone casual while her hands trembled slightly. Vanessa turned toward Anna with a bright, polite smile. "Oh, hello. I didn't expect to see you here," she said. Her tone was friendly, warm, completely unaware of the storm brewing in Anna's heart. Anna returned a measured smile, but inside she felt anything but calm. Watching Vanessa interact with her husband was like staring at a reflection of herself in a life that could have been. A version of her marriage that was vibrant and lively in ways that had been dormant for years. She noticed how Mark's attention seemed completely absorbed by Vanessa, how he leaned in slightly as she spoke, and how easily she seemed to command his focus. They exchanged small talk for a few minutes. Mark's responses were kind but distracted. Anna noticed the way he glanced at Vanessa when she laughed, the ease with which she spoke, and the sparkle in her eyes that reminded Anna of the kind of connection she used to share with her husband. Each gesture, each smile, deepened the ache within her after that day. Anna began to notice patterns she had overlooked before. Mark spent more hours at work, often returning home late. He carried his phone with him everywhere, replying to messages with a distracted smile. Vanessa's name came up more frequently in casual conversation, not in any romantic context, but simply as a person whose insights and intelligence he admired. Each mention made Anna's stomach twist. She felt as though she was on the outside, watching her husband's attention shift, even if only slightly, away from her. At home, Anna tried to maintain her composure. She poured herself into household chores, preparing meals, helping the children with homework, and keeping the routines intact. She smiled when Mark came home, engaged in conversation about the day, and even laughed at his jokes, but her mind was never fully present. Each laugh, each casual remark reminded her of what she had witnessed. The tension built quietly over weeks. Anna became acutely aware of the emotional intimacy that seemed to spark between Mark and Vanessa. It wasn't physical, but it was present. A connection based on shared humor, understanding, and attention. Anna realized that marriage wasn't just about physical presence, it was about emotional presence, the kind of attention and recognition that makes someone feel truly seen. And she felt that she had stopped receiving it, at least in the way she longed for. One evening, after the children were asleep, Anna waited for Mark to come home. When he entered, weary from work, she noticed the way he carried himself, a slight tension in his shoulders, the distant look in his eyes. "Long day," he said, loosening his tie. Anna nodded, choosing her words carefully. "I can see that. Did you have dinner yet?" she asked softly, though her voice carried more weight than casual concern. Mark hesitated. "Not yet. I was thinking," he replied, uncertain how to explain the distance she had been noticing. Anna felt a surge of courage about Vanessa. She asked gently, though she hadn't meant to voice it aloud. The words hung in the air like a fragile glass, ready to shatter or reflect truth. Mark looked down for a moment, then met her gaze. "I don't know, maybe. She's easy to talk to." But that doesn't mean his voice trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Anna sensed that he struggled with the complexity of his own emotions. She felt a mixture of relief and confusion. Relief because he hadn't betrayed her physically, but confusion because she realized the emotional space had shifted. They were both aware that attention and connection could take forms she hadn't noticed in years. It was a reminder that marriage required constant care, emotional engagement, and shared understanding. Over the next few weeks, Anna reflected deeply on her own role in the relationship. She considered whether she had neglected the small gestures, the attentiveness, the daily connections that keep love alive. The realization was painful, but it was also enlightening. She began to understand that emotional infidelity wasn't about wrongdoing. It was about the quiet erosion of attention, intimacy, and acknowledgement that allowed a new presence, even a professional one, to seem vibrant in ways her marriage had temporarily lost. Anna also realized that her feelings were complex. She was jealous, yes, but she was also fascinated. Watching Mark interact with Vanessa revealed her own longing, not only for his attention, but for her own vitality, her own recognition, and the warmth of connection that life had softened over time. She understood that jealousy was a signal. It's a reflection of unmet emotional needs rather than a reflection of her husband's morality. In response, Anna began to act deliberately. She engaged in small acts to reclaim her connection with Mark, preparing meals that reminded them of shared memories, initiating conversations that encouraged emotional openness, and quietly observing herself as she noticed her own feelings without judgment. She realized that she had been so focused on protecting her children and maintaining routine that she had neglected the emotional intimacy that had once bound her and Mark together. One Friday evening, Anna made a conscious decision to sit down with Mark after dinner. She didn't confront him about Vanessa. She didn't accuse him or demand explanations. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "I've been noticing things," she said softly. "I've realized that our connection has changed, and I want to understand how we can rebuild it." Mark listened, his expression serious but open. "I've been feeling that too," he admitted. "I didn't know how to say it, but lately I've realized how easy it is to get caught up elsewhere, with work, with other people's ideas, with distractions." They talked long into the night, revisiting memories, acknowledging the quiet moments that had drifted apart, and exploring ways to reestablish emotional closeness. Anna realized that observing Mark with Vanessa had been painful, but it had also been a catalyst. It had awakened her awareness of the emotional care she wanted and needed, both for herself and for her marriage. By the end of the evening, a sense of calm settled between them. They didn't solve everything, and they didn't have all the answers, but they had begun the difficult work of reconnection. Anna understood that emotional intimacy required continuous attention and honest reflection, and she was determined to nurture it actively. As Anna went to bed that night, she no longer felt the same sharp sting of jealousy. Instead, she felt a quiet determination. She had witnessed the shift, acknowledged her emotions, and chosen to act with clarity rather than fear. She understood that observing, reflecting, and confronting the subtle truths of her relationship were necessary steps toward rebuilding trust, emotional closeness, and mutual appreciation. She realized that life was not static. Relationships were living, breathing things that required care. Watching her husband with Vanessa had been a mirror, reflecting not betrayal, but the areas where attention, affection, and emotional engagement had drifted. And now, with awareness and intention, Anna felt ready to take the steps necessary to reclaim what she and Mark had built together, a marriage rooted in love, trust, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. For the first time in weeks, she slept with a sense of clarity. She wasn't helpless, and she wasn't powerless. She had acknowledged the truth, faced her feelings, and begun the journey of emotional restoration. The road ahead would require patience, care, and open communication, but Anna knew she was capable of walking it. And that realization brought a quiet, hopeful peace. In the weeks following their long conversation, Anna felt a subtle shift. The tension that had once hung over the house began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet determination. Both she and Mark understood that the emotional closeness they once shared had been neglected, and now it required conscious effort to rebuild. They were not merely trying to fix what had been broken. They were striving to grow something stronger, something resilient to distraction, temptation, and routine. Anna started small. She paid closer attention to the details of their daily life, noticing the way Mark smiled when he returned from work, the tone of his voice when he discussed projects, and the fleeting moments when he seemed distant or distracted. Rather than allowing herself to be consumed by jealousy or fear, she began documenting her observations internally, not to criticize, but to understand. She realized that emotional intimacy wasn't about controlling her husband or forbidding interactions. It was about presence, attention, and shared vulnerability. One morning, as Mark was leaving for the office, Anna stopped him. "Before you go," she said softly, "let's have coffee together. Just us." Mark paused, slightly surprised, then nodded with a gentle smile. "I'd like that," he replied. They sat at the small kitchen table, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the room. For the first time in weeks, they were fully present with one another. No work emails, no distractions, no outside influences. Anna listened as Mark spoke about his plans for the day. Not just the tasks, but how he felt, the stress, the excitement, the challenges. And Mark listened as Anna shared her thoughts, her small victories, and the quiet worries she carried about the children, the house, and their life together. It was simple, ordinary, yet profoundly intimate. Over the next few days, and I noticed how these small acts of intentional presence began to affect her perspective. When Mark mentioned Vanessa at work, she no longer felt the same sting of jealousy. Instead, she viewed the relationship with clarity. Vanessa was intelligent and charming, yes, but she was part of Mark's professional world, not their personal life. Anna's focus shifted from fear to awareness, from insecurity to intentional connection. She understood that observing did not mean losing control. It meant recognizing patterns and making conscious choices about her own actions. One afternoon, Anna decided to speak more directly with Mark. They were sitting on the porch, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the yard. "Mark," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about the distance I've felt and the way I noticed your attention shifting. I want us to be honest about everything. Our needs, our feelings, our fears." Mark nodded, his expression serious but calm. "I've been thinking the same thing," he admitted. "I didn't realize how easy it was to get drawn into something outside of us emotionally, even in small ways. Vanessa is intelligent and easy to talk to. But you're my life, and I want us to focus on each other." They spoke for hours, not just about Vanessa or the recent tension, but about the broader state of their marriage. They revisited memories, recalling the laughter, the small adventures, and the quiet evenings that had once felt ordinary but were filled with connection. Anna remembered the warmth she had felt when Mark listened to her dreams, the comfort of knowing he cared deeply about her thoughts and feelings. They acknowledged where they had drifted, not as a source of blame, but as a map for rediscovery. In the days that followed, Anna implemented subtle changes in their routine. She began leaving notes for Mark, small reminders of appreciation, gratitude, and shared memories. She suggested evening walks together, where conversation flowed naturally and distractions were set aside. She found moments to praise him sincerely, not superficially, but genuinely, celebrating both the personal and professional aspects of his life. Mark, in turn, reciprocated. He made time for her, checked in during the day, and consciously focused on rebuilding emotional closeness. Anna realized that what she had observed at the gala, the spark between Mark and Vanessa, had been a mirror. It reflected the attention and vitality that had been missing in their own marriage, not as a threat, but as a wake-up call. Watching had been painful, yes, but it also provided clarity. It forced Anna to confront her own needs, her own emotional landscape, and the ways she could actively nurture the bond she shared with Mark. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Anna noticed how naturally they laughed while chopping vegetables, how their conversation flowed with ease, and how the small gestures, a hand on the shoulder, a shared glance, rekindled warmth that had been dimmed by months of routine. She felt a surge of gratitude, not just for Mark, but for herself. She had chosen awareness over fear, reflection over jealousy, and engagement over withdrawal. The true test came a few weeks later. Vanessa visited the office again, and Mark mentioned her casually during dinner. Anna observed without panic, noticing that her own emotional state had shifted. She felt no sting, no anxiety, only calm observation. She understood her husband's professional boundaries and her own emotional strength. She could witness interactions without letting them dictate her feelings or actions. Anna, you realized something profound. Marriage wasn't a static state, but a living connection that required intentional effort. Emotional closeness, attentiveness, and mutual care were not optional. They were essential. By facing the truth, acknowledging what had been lacking, and actively working to restore it, she and Mark were building a stronger foundation. They weren't just repairing distance. They were deepening understanding, intimacy, and trust. One Saturday morning, Anna suggested a small weekend getaway. It wasn't extravagant, just a nearby cabin by the lake. A chance to step away from work, responsibilities, and routines. Mark agreed eagerly, appreciating the gesture and the opportunity to reconnect in a peaceful setting. The trip was simple yet transformative. They walked along the lakeside, shared stories, laughed at small mishaps, and spent quiet moments reflecting on the life they had built together. Anna noticed the warmth in Mark's eyes when he looked at her, the ease with which conversation flowed, and the comfort of shared silence. She realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was cultivated in attention, empathy, and daily connection. During one evening, sitting by the fireplace, Anna spoke candidly. I watched you at that gala, she admitted. I saw how you interacted with Vanessa. It hurt, yes, but it also made me see what was missing between us. And I realized that I don't want to lose us. I want to rebuild what we have, stronger than before. Mark reached for her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I felt it too, he said softly. I didn't realize how much I had taken for granted. Seeing that spark with her, it reminded me of how much I value the connection we've always had. I don't want to lose it either. In that moment, Anna understood the depth of their choice. They could allow fear, jealousy, or resentment to dominate, or they could choose awareness, honesty, and deliberate care. They chose the latter, committing to nurture their relationship with intention and openness. Returning home, they carried the lessons of the getaway with them. Daily life resumed, but the patterns had changed. They consciously prioritized time together, celebrated small victories, and communicated openly about challenges and emotions. Anna found herself feeling secure, valued, and appreciated in ways that had been dormant. Mark, too, demonstrated renewed attentiveness, not because he had been drawn to someone else, but because he recognized the importance of maintaining connection in a marriage that required care and presence. Anna realized that witnessing her husband's interaction with Vanessa had been both painful and enlightening. It had forced her to confront difficult emotions, reflect on her own needs, and actively choose how to engage in her marriage. What initially seemed like a threat became a catalyst for growth, deepening understanding, and strengthening the bond between them in the months that followed. Anna and Mark experienced a profound transformation. They celebrated the ordinary moments, morning coffee, shared walks, quiet evenings, as opportunities to connect. Emotional intimacy became intentional. Communication became more open, and the trust between them deepened. Anna felt empowered by her awareness, not controlling, but actively participating in the health and vitality of her relationship. One day, months after the initial gala, Anna saw Vanessa's name appear in Mark's conversation again. This time, she smiled quietly, feeling calm and secure. The earlier tension, the pangs of jealousy, and the fear of distance had been replaced by clarity and confidence. She understood that the spark she had once feared was a reflection of attention and vitality, something that could exist in observation, but did not dictate her happiness or their marriage. Anna and Mark had learned a vital truth. Relationships require continuous effort, awareness, and honesty. They had confronted jealousy, emotional distance, and subtle threats to their connection, and emerged stronger, more attentive, and more appreciative of one another. Watching, feeling, and reflecting had been necessary steps toward this growth by the time the next gala rolled around. Anna attended with a lightness in her heart. Vanessa was present, and Mark interacted with her professionally, politely, and without the previous tension. Anna watched calmly, her heart secure, her mind clear.